When someone states they're from Kentucky, it can mean many different things. They could come from a formal coal mining town that's fallen from good grace, the major city of Louisville, or a smaller city such as Paducah. I haven't always lived in Kentucky, but I've lived here for a month and a half and visited often as a kid. I've been to many different parts of the state and learned a lot, especially since I've moved here. I've long been fascinated with just how different every place that I've been to in Kentucky has been. Eastern and Western Kentucky each have different cultural identities. These identities are shaped by the Commonwealth's economy, history, and historical movement and history. These differences and sometimes stem from decades or even centuries back still influence how people think, talk, and act. First of all, I want to dive into the historical, geographic, and economic roots of each region's culture. Now, I'll look into the cultural differences between Eastern and Western Kentucky. Finally, I'll take a look at whether modern change is bringing together the two cultures or widening the gap. Let me begin by explaining how historical and geographical differences gave way to the origins of Eastern and Western Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is located in the Appalachian Mountains and foothills. It's characterized by difficult terrain, narrow valleys, and closed off communities. Western Kentucky is more flat, more lies in lowlands or the plateau region with more fertile land and greater access to river systems and easier to access transportation corridors. The economic base and industry of eastern Kentucky is more traditional and mining based, with small scale subsistence farming, timber, with communities sometimes dependent on extractive industries. In western Kentucky, we're more agricultural, more commercial farming, more river trade connections, more town growth, more diversified economies over the years. When it comes to migration, Eastern Kentucky has been more culturally shut out compared to Western Kentucky. They're often, they just haven't had as much out migration through the years, and they have a stronger sense of Appalachian distinctiveness. Western Kentucky has been exposed more to Southern culture, you could say, commerce, and contact with neighboring states. Kentucky overall has mixed cultural roots. Some people are from the South, but when you look into where people are from, you'll see a lot of Scottish people, Irish, English, German, Appalachian, and Southern. But the Eastern Mountain culture preserves older folkways. On those bases, how is culture, identity, and values expressed differently in everyday life in Eastern and Western Kentucky? Eastern Kentucky is a strong center of Appalachian folk, bluegrass, and folk tradition. Western Kentucky also shares traditional and folk music traditions, but has greater exposure to other musical styles in broader areas due to river commerce and other factors. An example is Eastern Kentucky's Country Music Highway that celebrates local music legends and regional musical culture. In Eastern Kentucky, Appalachian pride is more typical or hillbilly identity. Maybe externally marginalized, but internally strong, independent, and place bound. In Western Kentucky, identities may be more towards the general Kentucky Southern culture, which focuses more on commerce, mobility, and connectedness. Regional variation in dialect, accent, local legend, and idiomatic speech convey these regional identities. When it comes to festivals and stuff like that, Eastern Kentucky celebrates county fairs, coal mining heritage, Appalachian crafts, storytelling festivals, and family traditions. Bluegrass music, folklife, arts, and Appalachian heritage festivals are more prevalent and prominent in the East, Western Kentucky definitely still has stuff like this, but it's just not on the same level as Eastern Kentucky, and they're a little more diverse than, say, Eastern Kentucky as well. When it comes to like stereotypes and stuff, when you go over to Eastern Kentucky, you'll see a lot of people that are classified as others as hillbillies or like out there, very country, very folk kind of stuff. And Western Kentucky is more characterized for being urban and lacking small town character or being too influenced by outside culture. There's also internal division within Kentucky. The East, there are differences. There's coal towns versus subsistence areas. And between border regions where the East meets the West, there's also a lot of tension there. As extractive industries shrink, people tend to move away. So all these coal mining towns that are dying, a lot of people are moving out of Eastern Kentucky. A lot of young people from the East are coming to the West for more job opportunities, more cultural differences and experiences, stuff like that. But if regional inequalities persist, culture can underwrite division as much as unity. So yes, there remain two Kentuckys in many ways, but perhaps the gap is narrowing, and the possibility exists for more inclusive, shared identity. In brief, Eastern and Western Kentucky both have unique cultural stories, differences of land, labor, identity, and change. Wendell Berry, perhaps the most Kentucky wise philosopher from Arkansas, once wrote that the land is the real biography. Likewise, if you look close into the hills of the East or the farms of the West, you'll see two versions of Kentucky's biography. Our goal should be not to choose between them, but to appreciate how both sides are a part of our state's story.